So, we're in this amazing moment for AI, right? There are tutorials everywhere promising you can build these mind-blowing tools in like 5 minutes. But, and this is a big but, there's this huge gap between that quick demo and a real working product. So today, we're going to bridge that gap. We're going to dive into what it really takes to go from a cool prototype to a production-grade LLM system that people can actually rely on.
I mean, you've seen these titles, right? YouTube, blogs, social media, man, they're just flooded with videos showing you how a few lines of code can create something that honestly, it feels like magic. And you know what? It's kind of true. The access we have now to models like GPT and libraries like LangChain, it's been an absolute revolution. But that leads to the real question, doesn't it? If it's so easy to build the demo, why is it so ridiculously hard to turn it into a product that's actually reliable? Something people can count on day in and day out. Well, that is the massive canyon that separates a fun experiment from a successful product. And it's right there, in that gap, where the real work of LLM engineering actually begins.
All right, so first up, let's talk about that initial high. That rush of excitement you get when you first build something and you're just like, wow, this is going to change everything.
I mean, the barrier to entry has just completely vanished. You don't need a PhD in machine learning anymore. If you've got some basic Python skills and a good tutorial, you can whip up a chatbot or a summarizer in just a few hours that works, well, surprisingly well, at least on the specific examples you feed it.
And that right there is the trap. The demo looks so good. It's so convincing that everyone, your boss, your clients, maybe even you, starts thinking, awesome, we're like 90% of the way there. There's this assumption that the hard part is over, when the truth is, you haven't even really started the real journey yet.
Okay, so this is the part of the story where that early optimism slams headfirst into the cold, hard reality of the real world. That simple, beautiful demo, it can very quickly devolve into a chaotic, unpredictable, and super expensive mess. This slide really nails the difference. See, a demo is built for what we call the happy path. You give it the perfect input, the one you know it can handle. But a real product, it has to live on the unhappy path. It has to deal with all the weird inputs, the strange questions, the edge cases you couldn't even dream of. A production system has to be robust, not just impressive for a few seconds. And this is where the production nightmares start creeping in. Suddenly, your super fast demo takes 30 seconds to get back to you, which for a user feels like an eternity. Your costs are exploding because you're making thousands of API calls a day. And the quality? It's all over the place. Because LLMs are probabilistic, what worked perfectly yesterday might give you complete nonsense today. And without any monitoring, you're flying blind. You have this complex system that you can't debug and you definitely can't trust. So what's the solution? Well, the most important thing is that we have to fundamentally change how we think about this. We have to stop just hacking together cool demos and start adopting a real, disciplined engineering practice. And that brings us to LLM engineering. It's not just about writing clever prompts. No way. It's the entire stack. We're talking data pipelines, evaluation frameworks, the infrastructure it runs on, and the user experience. You have to remember, the AI model itself is often just one small piece of a much, much bigger puzzle. This really captures that whole mindset shift. For a demo, the only question you have to answer is, does it work? But for an engineered product, the question becomes, does it work reliably for everyone under all kinds of conditions? Oh, and is it cost-effective and easy to maintain? See? It's a completely different ballgame.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk about some practical, hard-won lessons from teams who are actually doing this stuff. And we'll start with two of the biggest topics out there: Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, and the big one, evaluation.
All right, here's a really interesting insight on RAG. For a long time, we were all obsessed with perfecting how we chunk up our documents. But now, with these new models that have massive context windows, a simpler approach is often way better. Instead of writing all this complex logic to create perfect little chunks, you can just give the model more data, feed it bigger chunks. The models are now smart enough to find that needle in a much bigger haystack, and that can massively simplify your entire data pipeline. This quote says it all. If you ask any team that's put an LLM into production what the hardest part is, I bet you 9 times out of 10 they'll say this: evaluation. It is always the problem. I mean, how do you even know if a change you made is actually an improvement? A slightly rephrased answer might be better for one person, but way worse for another. Your standard accuracy scores, they just don't cut it here. So, how do you even begin to tackle that? Well, you use a pragmatic workflow like this one. First, you start with automated metrics, something like using an LLM as a judge to get a broad signal. Then, and this is key, you only look at the versions that show improvement across all of those automated metrics. From there, you bring in the humans, the domain experts, for that final crucial quality check. And over time, all their feedback helps you build this small, super high-quality golden set of evaluation data. That set becomes your definition of what good actually means for your product.
Okay, so to handle all this complexity, you've got data, models, evaluation, serving. You can't just have it all in a single script. That's a recipe for disaster. You need a proper, robust architecture.
A really common and effective pattern for this is what's called the FTI architecture. It stands for Feature, Training, and Inference. And the whole point is to avoid that monolithic spaghetti code approach where everything is tangled together, because that becomes a total nightmare to maintain. The idea is pretty simple, actually. You separate your work into 3 distinct pipelines. You've got the feature pipeline, which handles all things data, collection, processing, storage. Then there's the training pipeline, which is where you do all your model experimentation and fine-tuning. And finally, the inference pipeline is the live system that your users actually talk to. By keeping these separate, you can, say, upgrade how you process your data without any fear of breaking the live model. It's basically a blueprint for keeping your sanity.
And finally, once you have the right mindset and the right architecture in place, you learn probably the most surprising lesson of all. The biggest, toughest challenges, they're not technical at all.
This chart just completely flips what most people think. We tend to believe that building AI is all about the core modeling, right? But if you talk to experienced teams, that's maybe 10% of the actual effort. The vast majority of their time, the real heavy lifting, is spent on data, on infrastructure, and on all of this crucial non-technical work. And this is the real work. It's managing expectations, bringing stakeholders down from thinking it's magic to understanding the reality. It's about digging in to find the actual business problem you're solving, not just throwing AI at something because it's cool. It's persuading other teams to get you the data you need. Honestly, the success or failure of an AI project often hinges more on these soft skills than on any line of code you write.
So, as we wrap this up, this is the one question I want you to ask yourself for your next project. Are you designing a demo, or are you engineering your product? Are you building something that just looks impressive for a minute, or are you building something that is reliable, scalable, and creates genuine, lasting value? Because making that leap from one to the other, well, that's the entire discipline of LLM engineering. It's a challenging journey, for sure, but it's absolutely worth taking. And it all starts by realizing that the 5-minute demo is just the very first step on a very, very long road.